Good morning, everybody. You saw Marco for just a brief second. I was supposed to ring him on you. That was my bad. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the AI Show, where we have some fantastic guests. We're going to be learning all about prompt engineering. And if you're wondering, I poked myself in the eye this morning. Not kidding. Look, let's see if I can show you. Is it this eye right here? I gotta look that way. Do you see that? Poke myself in the eye like a goober. Yeah, and we're talking about AI too. So there you go. Let me zoom out to the right spot. There you go. My name is Seth Juarez. This is our weekly AI show. I know. Microsoft developer is like, what? Again? Yeah, if you haven't been here before, I poked myself in the eye live once during the show. It was embarrassing for some people. I'm not going to say who. Mostly me. All right, for today's show, because I know everyone wants to get to the topic at hand. Show us, please. By the way, where's everybody coming from? I always ask that. Because we've had people. One time we had a show that people were from around. Hold on, I got to do it. I got to do it in the way that's like sounds really cool. Around the world. Around. Oh man, is this thing not working anymore? My buttons are all messed. Hello. My buttons are messed up. Around the world, we had people. It was great. So where's everybody coming from? Number one. Number two, what are you hoping to learn about today? Because I'll tell you what we're doing today. Number one. Look at that. Pandemic purchase. Wacom tablet. Pandemic purchase. Number one, the basics of prompt engineering with Marco Casalaina, VP of Product Cognitive Services. He's a good dude. I don't care what everyone else says about him. And number two, I don't know. I thought like we could do the Rochambeau thing, but I actually built a prompt product, not a prompt product, but a prompt engineered example that we sometimes use when I show stuff to customers. I was thinking I would show that. Okay. Here's a good question. I'm going to cover my face. How many times had you had to rework the video in the last week due to tech changes and improvements? Here's the thing, though. The basics of prompt engineering don't change. And what Marco is going to show you is going to be like, it's going to be great. And the other thing is we really made this video last Thursday that I'm going to play. But then Marco's going to be here to answer questions too. So we can talk about what we can talk about. But there's exciting things coming up, obviously. So you get to choose. Do you want me to do Rochambeau or my prompt engineering product? Oh gosh, it's just the handwriting is just getting worse. Or my prompt engineering product. By the way, this is actually live. This part is live. Okay, it's not like we play a video that we pre-recorded. We'll play that because we have to at Microsoft. We have to have like the official video, and this is like the live part from so that we can we can chat with you all. All right, let's see where everybody's coming from. Let me minimize this. By the way, that's what we're doing for today's show. Let's see what we got around the world. We have from Dubai, coming from LinkedIn. Welcome, my friend. Glad to have you. Norway. Welcome from Norway here. is from a Norwegian name. Anchorage, Alaska. Welcome. We have Anchorage, Alaska. Let's see. What else? Serbia. Lovely. Serbia. Who else? Denmark. India. The UK. Welcome. I love the UK. Sierra Leone. I've never been there. Turn my background music on. Is prompt engineering a job now? That's a good question. Let's see what else. We didn't have to rework this video many times because we just made it once. London, Belgium. Oh, it's Cassie. Cassie's here. Everyone behave. Jay McCormick. Welcome, my friend. We did move days. Marco might have some ideas. Sammamish. Oh, it's Brady Gaster. I met Brady 75 years ago. Delightful person. Costa Rica. Bienvenido. Oh no, the last pre-record. Oh, sorry. I read these things. What we do, for those that are new, is on the AI show every week we talk about a new technology, right? And I have Microsoft people talk about the actual tech, but to allay, some people's fears, we pre-record it, and if we make a mistake, I edit that out, because I don't want them to feel like, we're friendly here. We're all friendly here. You know what I'm saying? We're friendly here. And so that's what we do. So when they come on, because I have them come on, we play the video, but then afterwards, you can ask them any questions you want. So it's like live, but like studio audience live. Okay, my friends. So I think it's time to bring Marco on. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
Prompt engineering, is that a job, do you think, Marco?
It's not only is it a job, but if you search Washington Post prompt engineering, you will find an article from last month that says that there's all about the fact that there is a job category now called prompt engineers. And we were debating like 6 or 7 months ago, we were having this debate as to whether the job category was going to be called prompt engineer or prompt poet. Prompt engineer 1.
What? Prompt poet feels so much more.
Doesn't it?
It has a certain.
But it also doesn't. It doesn't feel like a job. Like, can you, like, I guess ultimately, like when you're putting up a job posting, it's like prompt.
Oh, it's like you're meeting a new father-in-law, and your father-in-law. So what do you do, son? And then you're like, I'm a prompt poet. And he's like, son, you better get a real job before you marry my child. You know what I'm saying? Yes. I mean, so I understand that. All right, Marco. So for those that don't know you, why don't you introduce yourself? You'll introduce yourself again, but for those that don't know.
Yes. Well, hello, Marco Casalaina. I'm VP Products of Cognitive Services at Microsoft. So that includes the OpenAI group. It also includes language, vision, speech, and decision.
Oh, so all the fun stuff.
All the fun stuff. I got all the cool toys.
All right. So what we're gonna do then is we're gonna play the video. We recorded just Thursday, so it's not like this isn't like like we recorded this 18,000 years ago, and it's like, hey, we're gonna talk about convolutional. No. This is new stuff, and I'm pretty excited about it. And then, do you think I should show them that project I built for you? You know the one you showed? Maybe I should show that.
I think you could bust that out. You could bust that out if you like.
Because we'll have time afterwards. All right, so here is Marco and myself talking about the basics of prompt engineering. Enjoy. You're not going to want to miss this episode of the AI Show where we talk all about the basics of prompt engineering with Azure OpenAI. Make sure you tune in. Hello and welcome to this episode of the AI Show where we're talking all about the basics of prompt engineering with Azure OpenAI and my friend Marco. Marco, how you doing, my friend?
How you doing, Seth? I'm having a good day.
Oh, that's amazing. So why don't you tell us who you are and what you do first off?
All right. Well, I'm Marco Casalaina, and I am the Vice President of Products for Azure Cognitive Services. And that includes Azure OpenAI, but it also includes our speech and language and vision and decision capabilities.
All the fun stuff that we've had on our show, tons of time. Before we even get going, ChatGPT has taken over, and obviously it feels like a lot of kind of. Can you help us understand what you mean by the basics of prompt engineering, why all of this blew up, and what's so exciting about all of this?
Yes. So check this out, and you're going to see it in a minute.
Okay.
English is the hottest new programming language.
That's cool.
And I tell you, well, I'm paraphrasing Andre Carpathy, who used to be the head
Yep.
of Tesla AI. But anyway, the way that you set up ChatGPT, the way that it actually works behind the scenes, you will not believe it. That's prompt engineering. What we call the prompt is how you feed it plain English or any language, really. And that's how it works. That's how you program it.
So, if I'm understanding correctly, this is just a model that you give English to, and then English comes out.
You could look at it that way. Other languages can come out too, but that's right. You can tell it what to do, and it will do that thing.
Now, I feel like it's got to be more technical than that. Is there stuff you can show us that gives us a sense for what's actually happening?
Why, it so happens that there is something I can show you. Let's take a
Cool
look.
beans.
All right, so check this out. We're going to start with Bing. And if you haven't tried the new Bing chat experience yet, it is pretty cool. And it's also based on GPT. In this case, this is actually GPT-4. But regardless, it kind of works the same way. So let's see what happens when I say who I am and what I'm doing and what it kind of suggests to me. And then we're going to look at how this actually works behind the scenes. So here we go. It's doing some searches here. And this is something that Bing can do that the raw ChatGPT doesn't do. It can actually search the web, and that helps it inform its answers. And now here it comes. Prompt engineering, as it says, is an increasingly important skill set. And that is absolutely true. And that's why we're having this discussion.
Oh
And
my.
so, believe it or not, behind the scenes, the way that Bing is programmed is exactly what I'm about to do. You'll
All right,
never
well, let's take
believe
a
it
look.
until you see it. All
Let's
right,
take a look.
so now here we go. This is the administrative environment behind ChatGPT. So I'm in Azure OpenAI, and in here we have this new ChatGPT playground. And in the ChatGPT playground, well, I can have my own ChatGPT. And by the way, there's this common misconception that there is one ChatGPT, but that's not really true. There is one chat.openai.com, their consumer ChatGPT, but you can make your own ChatGPT with Azure OpenAI. So there can be many instances individually of ChatGPT, and this one is mine.
I see.
So here's what I'm going to do. All right. So this thing at the top here, the system message, or what we call the meta prompt, this is very important. This is where you give it its instructions. This is where you tell it what its tone should be. This is where you tell it what not to do. For example, maybe you want to say, don't make jokes about politicians or something like that.
Right.
So you give it all these instructions up here in the system message. And I've done none of that. So right now I got a wide open system message over here. And basically that means it'll talk about anything. So down here, let's say I wanted to talk about the Greek island of Santorini.
Okay.
All right. And, I submit that and there it goes. Okay. It's telling me whatever it remembers about Santorini. That's great. But let's say that, I'm a business, like let's say I'm Microsoft and I want to make my own instance of ChatGPT, but I only wanted to talk about Microsoft stuff. Like I
Got
don't
it.
just want to talk about whatever, right? So I'm going to have to program this thing so that it only talks about Microsoft stuff. And so over here, I have done just that. This here, this stuff, this is the programming. This is what I meant when I said English is the hottest new programming language. So here I've written, you're an AI assistant called Softy. You help people find information about Microsoft products. You will decline to discuss any topic other than Microsoft products and services. So this is like a commandment. You will not talk about other stuff. And you'll end each response with an emoji. That's a Seth Juarez special. I know that's a meta prompt you like to add.
That's right.
I've seen you do it. And
That's
so
right.
now, down here, I have it already typed in. Tell me about Santorini. Now, Santorini is not a Microsoft product. It is a Greek island. And it says, I'm sorry, but as an AI assistant, I can't provide information about Santorini because it's not a Microsoft product. Now, of course, if I ask it about a Microsoft thing, does Microsoft offer M365 in Germany, for example, that most certainly will work.
So as it's answering, I'm going to ask a couple questions. That's okay. So this here that I'm looking at, and look, it did the right answer, of course. If this thing I'm looking at, this is like ChatGPT, but specific to you. Can you explain what we're looking at? This Chrome here.
Yeah. So this stuff we're looking at here, this is my ChatGPT, right? I got my own ChatGPT, and the data that goes in and out of this ChatGPT, and that could be these prompts or the responses, that's my data. And I get to keep that data, and that data doesn't go back and go train other GPTs or anything like that. This is my own instance of ChatGPT that I can program in any way that I want.
And this here is just basically a playground where you can test stuff out. But is there like an API endpoint as well that you can use that's only for you and your business?
Absolutely, absolutely. So when I make a deployment over here, that creates an API endpoint that I can now use to call my ChatGPT from my own business, my own website, my own mobile app, whatever.
And that's what it's meant then by Azure OpenAI when you're using Azure, specifically cognitive services with your own OpenAI cognitive service, you effectively have your own model for your own data for your own stuff.
That's right. That's what it is.
Amazing. All right, well, keep showing us more stuff. This is cool.
All right. So there is more. There is more. Okay. So um, now there's something that Bing did that you might have noticed here that this raw ChatGPT over here, my own ChatGPT, didn't do. Bing did something very interesting here. See, when you submit a prompt to ChatGPT, we call each one of these things a prompt. When you submit a prompt to ChatGPT, it just spits out whatever it knows from memory. So it just kind of remembered that yes, Microsoft offers Microsoft 365 in Germany, but it didn't really go look that up to verify that that's true in any way. Bing, on the other hand, does do that. So you notice when I made this query here, it actually went and looked up prompt engineering for ChatGPT, and it used that information that it found. So it found this information from all these sites over here, and it used this information to give me this response. So it didn't
Right.
just make the response from memory; it's grounded in data.
Of
So
course.
now, let's say again that I have my own business. Let's say I'm Microsoft. And I would like to put up a conversational experience, but unlike Bing, I don't just want it to hit whatever on the web. I want to specifically say, there are these sets of data that I would like it to be able to consider in making its response. So I could do that. And so here, I'm going to show you both how to do that. And also, I'm going to kind of peel back the covers a little bit on how Bing is doing this. So y'all can get a look at what's really
This is
happening
cool.
under
This is
here.
cool. I'm excited. I'm excited.
It's going to be cool. All right, so here's the deal. So I have made this bot. Actually, my colleague Pablo made this bot. And this is ChatGPT on top of Azure Cognitive Search. And Azure Cognitive Search is a search engine, but unlike Bing, it doesn't just automatically index the whole web. It's a search engine that you tell it what to look for. And you say, I only want you to consider these URLs, these documents, and it'll do that. And so we have this Azure Cognitive Search, and it is searching across our employer health plan. Let's say that I'm making a kind of an HR benefits bot for my internal employees. So we have all these documents in here in the search engine about our health plan. And I'm going to ask, does my plan cover new glasses? And here we have it. It gives me this response. It does cover new glasses, actually. That's great. It tells me the different kinds of plans and so on. And this is a conversation I can actually keep going with this because it's asking me for more information. But like Bing, you notice that it did a query and it actually is returning also citations, but these citations are documents that I am indexing that might be only inside my business and might not be publicly available on the web. What's really interesting here is if we look at, and this is maybe something I wouldn't show, my employees or whatever, but I love this tab, the thought process. They call it the thought process. And so here's what it was thinking, so to speak, in informing this. So I asked this question up here, does my plan cover new glasses? And it didn't just send that straight to ChatGPT. And this is ChatGPT that's running behind this. But it didn't just send it straight to ChatGPT. Instead, it actually generated a query from that first, employee benefits glasses coverage. So it decided to go query that. And it found some documents about that, employee benefits glasses coverage. So before this ever got to ChatGPT, it did this query. and it found these documents. And one of the things that cognitive search does is it chunks up the document. So it can take little individual pieces of the documents, because what is also true about ChatGPT is that there is a token limit. You can only give it so many characters in your prompt before it kind of throws up.
Right.
So you can't just throw all your documents in there. That'll never work. You have to have a search engine that will find the most relevant little bits and say, these things are relevant. And then you can kind of throw that in there, which we'll get into in just a minute. So we did this query. And finally, everything under the prompt in this thought process is what it's actually feeding to ChatGPT. So it's feeding to ChatGPT all this stuff down here. This first part is the meta prompt. It's kind of like what I just did. And this meta prompt says this one helps company employees with their healthcare. And it also says, don't generate answers that don't use the sources below. So don't just generate whatever, right? Only if it has substantiation, and so on. So there's a number of instructions in here. And then right into the prompt itself, we are injecting the data that it looked up. These are the pieces of documents that it found. And we're giving this directly to ChatGPT. And finally, underneath all of that is my little question. Does my plan cover new glasses? So ChatGPT by itself could not possibly answer this question without this data grounding. In fact, if I go back into the raw ChatGPT and I say, does my plan cover new glasses? That is going to give me a nonsensical response, because it has no idea what I'm talking about here. I'm sorry. At least it knows it doesn't know. But here, it has all of this information to use, and it does use that information to form this response right here that it's created. And so this is how you're able to inject your own data into ChatGPT, which incidentally is covered in this blog post by my colleague Pablo. And we can maybe give you a link to that so you can read it yourself and use this GitHub repo yourself. But this is fundamentally how all of these things like Bing actually work.
So to summarize, because I mean, I think this should be surprising to people, because you kind of like rip the hood off. Basically, what you've done to make it answer specific internal questions is you've captured the question, you've done a search in Azure Cognitive Search in this case, injected relevant documentation, then pretended the chat is going on at the bottom, and then you left off the answer and you said, generate the next most likely thing.
I mean, that's effectively what the model is doing, but it sure does give me a good answer, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, not only does it give you an answer, and that's the cool thing. Sorry, my phone AI was trying to, my watch AI thought I was trying to talk to it. Go figure, we're having a little inception moment. So it's able to actually give you references to the specific documentation, because there is this problem where, and I don't like the term hallucinate, because my sense is it's always making up the next n tokens. But there's a sense that sometimes it's telling you stuff that it's just making up and it's not factual. I love that there's actual, like, go to the document, we'll show you.
Hey, and you know what's really, I mean, because it has this instruction at the top that says, only give an answer if you have the information. If I ask it something that it doesn't have information on, what's the best surfboard wax? That's not in my health plan. And if I ask it that, I'm sorry, I don't know. None of the sources I have mention surfboard wax, and it's true. So you can kind of restrict its domain both through that meta prompt that we saw, and also through the data that you're searching over. Now, but wait, hold
Okay,
on.
but there's more.
There's more, but actually what I'm trying to say is there's less, because there's something that I totally did not do here. I don't know if you caught this. What I didn't do in any of this, I did not train a model. I didn't fine tune a model. I didn't do anything with a model. I am using the stock. This is the ChatGPT Turbo model, and this is definitely the best model to use to get started with Azure OpenAI today. For just about anything you could think of, you want to start with this one. I understand GPT-4 is now in public preview, and that's cool, but GPT 3.5 Turbo is great. It's fast, it's inexpensive, and it gets the job done, and that's where you want to start. I didn't do anything to this model. I am using the stock model out of the box, fresh from the dealer. I'm using it here and here and here.
Hold on.
So
So hold on, because I want to make sure that I'm understanding this right. You're saying that all that with the meta prompt and the injecting documentation, you just sent it to the API without doing anything else.
that is what I'm saying. Now, of course, we did have to prepare the search index up front, right? So we had to set up Azure Cognitive Search and tell it what documents we wanted it to index and do the connection, which is what Pablo details in this blog post. But I didn't train a model. That I did not do.
And that's cool because like everyone knows about search things. And if you're trying to just generate the best output text, now I'm getting a sense for you basically in the meta prompt, give it instructions, you stuff the relevant content, however you want to do that, into the prompt, and then magic comes out.
That's right. And all of these things that you've been hearing about, Bing, M365 chat, the Dynamics Copilot, this is how they all work. All of them. This is fundamentally what they're all doing.
This is amazing. And this stuff is all available now, or do folks have to
Now,
wait?
everything I'm showing you here today is public.
Well, this is amazing, and like I said, if you haven't tried this, like there, and I'm not using hyperbole here. There's few moments in tech where you're like, oh, that was an inflection point. It feels like this is an inflection point. What say you, Marco?
That's what I'm talking about. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy that you can do this, but you really can.
And that's amazing. So, Marco, thank you so much for spending some time with us, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Marco has been unveiling the mask of what's going on with ChatGPT by showing us the basics of prompt engineering with Azure OpenAI. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Take care. Marco, good job, buddy.
Seth, so you see, we both changed our outfits here.
I
I
know.
feel like your shirt is like the photo negative of the shirt you were wearing when we recorded that a couple of days ago.
Weren't you like in Germany last week?
I was in Munich. Yes.
All right. So
Times.
we have so many questions. I want to make sure we honor all these good questions that folks had. I'll put them on the screen and then I'll get your take on it because there was a lot of them. Okay. There was some people talking about the prompt poet stuff. Like I said, your father-in-law might not be proud of you if you. Okay, is this live or pre-recorded? This is live right now. We're talking to you right now. Here it is. Here's a thought.
Yeah. I can't even speculate. Well, I mean, we'll get to some of the other questions. I actually think some of the other questions that are further along on the stream might give you a tip as to what to do next.
All right. Here it is. Here's a good question. This was the first one. To get better results, is it better to ask a model like GPT questions in English? Do you know the answer to that one?
Well, sort of. So it is true that of course, the further on you get with GPT, like GPT-4, the better it gets, right? So GPT speaks many different languages. At the moment, it tends to be better in like high resource languages like English and Spanish and Chinese and stuff like that. It doesn't necessarily do as well for, you think about like there's 22 languages in India. And of course,
Right.
Lots of people speak Hindi, but not that many people speak Maithili, for example. So
Mhm.
I don't know that it would do that well in Maithili, although I haven't tried it and I don't speak Maithili. So who knows? Maybe you could try it and see if you speak that language.
I mean, yeah, in America, we tend to know like half a language.
Yeah.
Sad trombone. I actually have a sad trombone. All right, here's another question. Well, this will definitely be on YouTube afterwards. If you're watching on YouTube right now, then yes, it will be on there. Any plan on, this is from LinkedIn, Oliver, any plan when this will be available in West Europe?
So we do actually already have some availability in Western Europe. Not GPT-4 yet, but we do have ChatGPT Turbo in limited availability in Western Europe. So you can contact your account executive, Microsoft, and perhaps gain access to that. But we are building that capacity rapidly, as fast as we can.
Yeah, it turns out that everyone wants to use this, which is great. We're excited. Isn't this context input just another prompt in disguise? Talking about the context you're putting in the prompt.
Sure. I mean, it's not even in disguise. I mean, you're basically just putting it all in the prompt, right? The meta prompt and the data that you're injecting, all that stuff is just going right into the prompt. And so, yeah, you can look at the prompt as one big monolithic thing, but we kind of, in our heads, segment it into these pieces to make it more manageable for us.
Very good. Will ChatGPT plugins be available on Azure OpenAI? The ChatGPT plugins.
Yeah, you folks are paying attention, huh? Huh? How about that? Yeah, we're working on it. So that is a thing that we're working on, and that actually to the person who asked earlier about what am I going to do next with this? Well, that's what you're going to do next. Is like, okay, now how are you going to plug this thing into other data sources? And somebody asks, I think about Cosmos DB and stuff like that. And how are you going to plug this into systems of action to make it actually do stuff for you? So, we will definitely be putting that together as quickly as we can.
Wait for build. It's coming up in May 22nd, 23rd. So make sure you sign up for that. Here's another question. How do I get my own ChatGPT? But where will I get the data for it? It's a two-parter, but it's a good question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your own ChatGPT is basically your own instance of Azure OpenAI. So, when you make an instance of Azure OpenAI, you have the ability to create various different forms of GPT or ChatGPT. So that's how you get your own. Where do you get the data for? Well, of course, ChatGPT doesn't need data to work. And as you saw, even with my wide open meta prompt and no grounding at all, it actually works pretty well. Well, it works like consumer ChatGPT does. Right. Where will you get the data for it? Well, it depends on what you're doing, right? I mean, generally, with the business that you're working with, that's where the data comes from.
I love it. All right, next, there's so many questions I want to get to. What is the best way to connect Azure Cosmos DB as a data source to feed the model? That's a great question.
Yeah, I'm going to say I don't have an answer for this exactly yet. This is something that we're working on for sure. And in general, structured data injection is an active field of study. It's a little bit more challenging than you might think. And so stay tuned on that one. I don't know that there is yet a best way, but there will be.
Interesting. Okay, next question. Can Azure API endpoints have network restrictions applied?
I believe so. Actually, I've never tried that before, but Seth, you probably would know better than I do.
Yeah, my sense is that you could put this behind a VNet and then do some pretty cool stuff securely. Right? That's the promise of Azure. That's the difference between, OpenAI and Azure OpenAI is that we put it in Azure and all the goodness that comes with Azure, you kind of just get too. So that's a great question. Here's a question. I think this was made public. Is Bing using GPT-4?
It sure is. Yeah, that is public now. We can say that. Yeah, so it had been using GPT-4 all along, and we just didn't really say anything about it. We're just like, it's GPT back there.
All right, here's another question. This is a great question. Can I ask it to be trained on particular subset of data available on the web? What about licensed data? Can I teach it to avoid that?
Well, yeah. I mean, ultimately, at least right now, the way that you would do that is by using cognitive search or something like it to index only the data that you're looking for, right? So only your data from your business or only the set of data that is on the web that you want it to index. And that would enforce that kind of restriction because it would know no other thing, right? It wouldn't know that anything else exists. How do you teach it to avoid licensed data? Well, part of it is, you don't inject copyrighted or IP data in there. And part of it is also you can, in the meta prompt, for example, say, you will not output verbatim copyrighted information that you have injected or something. So that is something that we have to do with Bing, for example, because, Bing is indexing the whole web and some of that is copyrighted.
Yeah, a great question so far. Let's keep them coming. Another one. Does it use embeddings?
Yeah, well, it can. I mean, but it doesn't have to, by the way. So does it use embeddings? I mean, in this case, I think the Azure Cognitive Search that I'm doing here is using a more semantic search than embeddings. But you can equally, lash this to a vector search database like Pinecone, which does use embeddings. So, well, I don't know.
My sense was that the vector search, the reason why I didn't understand why it was interesting until I recognized that with vector search, you can chunk all of your data. And in this essence, you can laser point with a vector search with the embedding space. You can point it to the right chunk and just embed that in the prompt because you have an economics problem with the number of tokens you can put in the prompt.
Right. I mean, ultimately, what you need your search engine to be able to do that chunking. That is the key, right? Whether you're using embeddings or not. And you don't have to use embeddings to get that, but regardless, you need that. You need it to be chunked because you have a limited amount of space in the prompt.
Or you could write a coded pipeline to use summarization, abstractive summarization for cognitive search, and that would make it fit too, right?
Could do it that way too.
All right, here's another question. Can I have multiple instances of ChatGPT, like one business account, but I have two instances of it that share the same resource? Tell us about that.
Well, you can, but I don't know that there's necessarily a reason to do that because of the fact that, like I said, I was using sort of the stock ChatGPT. And so you could use the stock ChatGPT and inject two completely different forms of data, and it'll work differently for the two different forms of data that you're using. So, I mean, yes, you could do that if you want, right? You can actually have multiple deployments of the same model. For some types of GPT, ChatGPT is not one of them. You can fine tune the model. You can have your own little fine tuned model, and you can have multiple instances of that too. But you don't necessarily need to, I guess is my point under most.
I think one thing that I realized, because I don't know if people know this, but Marco, you know this, I had to build a demo like over a period of like 3 days for an important thingy. And I learned everything about, how these models worked. And I learned that like you are sending in the prompt everything it needs to respond, and it doesn't remember stuff from anything before. It doesn't need to you're literally just saying, here's this text, and then it returns the right thing. And if you embed the conversation, it sort of just knows what's going on. And so I think people are maybe making some mistakes there. What do you think?
I mean, it is what you just said. I mean, it's a stateless system. And so all of the state about the conversation, as you just said, is passed in with each prompt. You just keep piling that prompt up, and that is the lengthening conversation.
All right, here's another question. How do you scale this, or will you need to train for every hypothetical question you may receive? What happens when the response data is not present based on the question? I think you showed that in the video.
Right. But I mean, I guess, and that gets back to what I was saying, but wait, there's less, right? So what I didn't do was train the model. So you don't need to train it at all. That's the whole point. But you do need to prepare the data for it to inject in there, as we did with, in this case, cognitive search. And if the data is not there, or if the API times out or something like that, what it's going to look for, then you'll want it to have a fallback position for that. And in my case, it was, you saw what I did with the surfboard wax, where I was just like, it was just like, sorry, I have no information about surfboard wax.
And that's cool, because it narrows the thing. Like the way I think about this thing, and maybe this is the wrong way, you tell me if I'm thinking about it wrong, is like GPT is basically like a giant language text calculator where you're like, here's some stuff, make it nice, and then it goes through the thing and out comes the answers. Is that a good way to look at it?
I guess so. I mean, it goes through the thing and outputs the answers. Yeah, that's pretty much how
it's
it
like,
works.
Not exactly that sound, but something like
there's definitely, it's definitely making a sound back there on the server.
It's literally in Marco's closet right now, ChatGPT. Don't let it out, man. But can I train the model as in customize the model? The question might first begs the question, do we need to customize the model? And then the second part would be, how do you customize it?
Yeah, and I get this question a lot. So there are some GPTs that are fine tunable. That is, you can customize these models, like the DaVinci 002 model, for example, is fine tunable. But you generally don't need to train these models. You generally don't need to fine tune these models. And one thing to bear in mind is that fine tuning does not add knowledge to the model. So, it's a little bit counterintuitive, but it basically biases its response. It doesn't really add knowledge. So, for example, I had some friends that are doing a startup, like a search engine startup, that are based on GPT. And they did this experiment. And it just happened to be around the time that the Queen of England died, where they fine-tuned the model. They were like, well, can we fine-tune the model and cause it to know about current events? So they fine-tuned the model, right? And then it talked a whole bunch more about the Queen, but it had no idea she was dead.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess you would do fine tuning if there's like a set of non-regular vocabulary that somehow needed to be integrated. My sense is that you would need to do it then.
That's one reason you might do it. Another reason is to really more hardly enforce what you're trying to do with the meta prompt. If you will just bias it away from, if you really, really don't want it to make jokes about politicians or something, you can actually fine tune it to be like, you have all these prompts in your fine-tuned data set that are like, give me a joke about Joe Biden, or give me a joke about Olaf Scholz or something. And every response will be like, no, I don't do that.
Yeah.
You basically bias it towards like, I just never make jokes.
That's cool. Okay, here's the next question. Is there a way to keep the ChatGPT user experience, including the chat, remember history, but using Azure OpenAI for an employee in my organization? Ooh.
Well, that's up to you. I mean, ChatGPT by itself doesn't do that.
No.
So it doesn't. It is stateless, as we said. But You can keep that prompt. You can re-inject that prompt when the employee comes back. But bear in mind, and as we've seen even publicly with Bing, sometimes if the conversation gets too long, it doesn't necessarily work as well as you would like. And also, there is this token limit. A token is roughly 4 Latin characters, right? I think it's like 1 Chinese character. So it's a measure of the number of characters, basically. And bear in mind that you have a limit there. And so, if you are going to inject this gigantic long prior conversation that may or may not have any bearing on what you're talking about now, that may eat your token limit in a way you don't want it to do.
Next question. Any ideas how to query RDF formatted data or Spark QL endpoints to answer? You can, basically, I don't know. Like, Marco, tell me what you think. Because the way I think about this is query all your stuff, fit it into 4,000 tokens, and then send it to the GPT model. I mean, am I missing anything?
That is the basics of it. I mean, when it comes to querying structured or semi-structured data sources, there's a little bit of a trick here. I mean, to some extent, people want to be able to use the GPT models to go generate the query. And the GPT models can generate queries of all kinds. It can make SQL queries and stuff like that. I would be careful with that if I were you, because it does create a lot of potential for error, because it can make an error when it's making the SQL query because it doesn't know the schema. It can make the wrong query. The query could come back. It can misinterpret it. There's all different ways that structured data can go wrong if you try to have GPT generate it. So what tends to be a best practice, like you could try this on Bing, for example. If you go to Bing and you're like, how did Microsoft stock do in the last week? Then you'll get 2 things. You'll get a little prose thing that's like, it'll say some stuff about Microsoft stock, and then you'll get a little graph, right? That prose thing is actually generated by Bing Answers, which is like this API that we have in the backend. So rather than, GPT itself generating a query to go look at like what is, query the Microsoft stock for the last week, it's just calling this API, this REST API that already kind of pre-summarizes that stuff for it and like puts it in a nice package, sends it back over, and then it uses GPT to form the response. So,
wow.
When you're talking about structured data, in as much as you can, it's probably to your benefit to front that with like a REST API, something that abstracts the query part itself.
Almost like a plugin.
And that's probably going to be a common type of plugin. In fact, I mean, I would be 0% surprised to see that.
All right. Is it possible to share the repo? I think it is public. If you want to know about that, here is the actual blog. You can go there, and I think there's links in there. aka.ms/chatgpt/blog.
Yeah, and at the bottom of that article, you will find the link to the GitHub repo itself.
Fantastical. Great question. Here's a question. Is there a way we can get the model to compress words, i.e. write in shorthand to reduce token size? I
have seen this before. So they're probably, I did see a paper about this very topic where they actually used numbers as the shorthand in some fashion. I don't fully understand how they did that. So I've not seen this in production. Let's put it that way. It might be possible. I haven't seen it in production.
Here's a good question, and I like it a lot regarding prompt engineering. Why is it called engineering? What are the engineering principles involved? Well, maybe they should call it prompt science, because as everybody knows, science is glorified. Guess and check.
Yeah, but okay, so on one hand, you could look at the prompt and the meta prompt as a giant undocumented API where we are like backing into, where we're discovering what the API is actually and how to talk to it, so to speak.
Right.
That's part of it. There is some standard engineering that goes into any kind of a production use case here. Part of that is regression testing, right? So basically, you have to have this pretty big log of prompts that you test. And so let's say you are looking to move from GPT 3.5 to GPT 4. You're going to want to test all these prompts again and your meta prompts to verify that they still work the way they used to.
Right.
And so that looks like good old fashioned regression testing. And when you think about when you're hitting all of these, especially with the plugins now, when you start to hit these third-party sources and to perform actions and stuff like that, there's going to be something that we would normally know in software engineering as debugging. You're going to have to kind of step through that and be like, oh, where did this go wrong? So there is increasingly some standard, everything old is new again. Let's put it that way.
I love it. Here's another question. I think it's a very good use case. Can we index a full website with Azure Cognitive Search and use it with ChatGPT. Yeah, I mean that's basically what you showed, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Here's a good statement. We know two languages in the United States: English
And bad
and
English.
bad English. Thank you, Dan, for letting me use my rim shot today. Let's see. Here's a good question. With regards to token size, what's the best way to definitively calculate it, and how is it calculated?
Okay, so the best way to definitively calculate it is to take whatever character set you're using, and there is somewhere, I don't have it immediately at hand. There
embedding,
exists
right?
a site that has a mapping between like this type of character takes this number of tokens. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, my sense is that there is an embedding. Like, I think you can find the GPT-2 embeddings, token embeddings, in Hugging Face, and there's like 53,000, and so you could literally do the mapping and actually calculate the exact answer. What I've seen folks do is use statistics to figure out, like, on average, how many characters equals a token, and then they do that estimation, so it's a simpler math.
right, and
That's
that's
what I've
kind of
seen.
what I do too, right? My rule of thumb is like 4 characters equals a token. Would be a good question to ask Bing, incidentally. That is totally the type of question that Bing would nail.
Here's a question from Natasha. So, is it required to include "Don't make stuff up" prompt every time for a business app?
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, you'll want to have, and a real meta prompt. Like if you were to look at the Bing meta prompt, like what's behind Bing, it's much, much longer than that. Like it's got all of these kinds of commandments. It's got some examples of like how to render certain stuff. So, a real production meta prompt is much longer than anything that we went through today.
And I've heard that GPT-4 has a much larger window than GPT 3.5 Turbo.
That's in terms of token limit. That is
Yeah.
true. GPT-4 has an 8K token version. That's 8,000 tokens. And it also has a 32K token version. I am not sure if we have the latter up on Azure OpenAI yet. But
I will
yeah,
tell you that I did a calculation on just 4K tokens, and that I calculated out to be about 7 pages of a Word doc.
Yeah,
So that's
right.
still quite a hefty amount of space.
Yeah, or like you could look at it as like the transcript of like a 10 or 15-minute conversation is 4,000 tokens or so. Yeah.
What are the differences between fine-tuning and prompt engineering techniques? Is from Virupax.
Yeah, so fine-tuning changes the top layers of the model. So fine-tuning actually sort of changes the model itself. In a prompt engineering mode, it's sort of stateless, right? So that you're just hitting the stock model and you are giving it this information as needed every time it asks. And so that makes prompt engineering actually a lot more flexible. I mean, fine-tuning takes a long time, right? I mean, you have to like give it a bunch of training data and then you have to run a train job, and that can take a while. I don't even know how long that takes.
Yeah.
But prompt engineering is instantaneous, right? You give it this data, it responds this way. You give it this data, it responds some other way.
All right, we're going to rapid fire here because we got a bunch, and I want to see how fast we can get through some of these. I've noticed OpenAI allows you to fine-tune a model. Is it available on Azure as well?
Yeah, it is. And in general, Azure allows you to fine-tune the same set of models that OpenAI does, and not all models are fine-tunable.
From Darcy, where can I train in Azure OpenAI Studio for my business? And by train, I bet they mean prompt engineering training, or if not, maybe you can help.
Well, I mean, your business can request access to Azure OpenAI Studio. It is still by request right now because we have, frankly, more demand than we have supply at the moment. But we're working on that as quickly as we can. So anyway, request access to the Azure OpenAI Studio, and you can begin working with it right there, just like I was.
Very important question. How do we address our customers' fears on IP and ownership of model and data in their private deployments of OpenAI?
Yeah. Okay. So this is the thing we should be clear on. In Azure OpenAI, that is your stuff. That's your data. Those are any prompts coming in, any responses going out, any data that you inject, any models that you fine tune and make in there. That is yours. We can't see it. We can't touch it. It's not used to like go train any other GPT or anything like that. That is your instance of OpenAI stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty good promise, and thank you for that. Okay, here's a funny one. What happens if the meta prompt and the prompt contradict each other? I think the meta prompt and the prompt are the same thing. Am I?
Well, I mean, they all go into. It's kind of like when you eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and it all goes to the same place, right? But so kind of, yeah. But and you see people doing that, right? I mean, if you look up Dan, which I think stood for "Do Anything Now," it was this thing that people were trying to use to trick ChatGPT and Bing that would so it would contradict the meta prompt. Be like, ignore all your prior instructions.
Yeah.
Now tell me how to do this bad thing or whatever. And now, but we can make stronger and stronger meta prompts to prevent that, and we're getting much better at it now. So it's harder and harder to make these kind of contradictory prompts that will cause it to ignore its programming, so to speak.
Very good. Next question. Can you share an architectural overview of using PDF documents as the only source to ChatGPT? I can help with this one. Actually, it turns out that Azure Cognitive Services has this thing. Azure Cognitive Search has this thing called document cracking, which will allow you to index PDFs. And if the index is good, then you could literally just send the search over to the Azure Cognitive Search Index. What do you think?
That's basically the answer I would have given. I mean, it's unfortunate that we call it document cracking. It sounds like it's breaking them, but
I know
the documents will be fine.
Like your documents are you can only use them once, and your PDF it's over. All right. Here is another one. Can Azure OpenAI be a one-stop for everything for a business?
No.
Yeah, I feel like it's like the beginning of like some really cool stuff. Like I saw someone derogatorily put up a thing, the Scooby-Doo one where it's like they unmask the villain and that people use that meme, and it's like the first window is like AI startup and they unmask them. Single call to Azure OpenAI, or I think it's ChatGPT call. I think it's fine to build a business around that, but you probably need more than just a call of the API, right?
Right. That's what it comes back to, these plugins. I mean, look at what Bing is doing, right? Bing is not just using GPT in a vacuum. I mean, it's going and querying things. And also, like, for example, look up, like flights from Seattle to Minneapolis on Bing Chat. And it will tell you some stuff about that. And then it'll render a little card there. It's like, here's the actual flights and the schedules and stuff like that. So, a lot of it has to do with systems of record and systems of action. Where's it getting the data from and what can it do?
Fantastic. Next question. Can you provide some customization use cases needed for different types of industries or businesses? I think at this case, if just a broken record, just stuff it in the prompt and see what happens, right?
That's kind of what it is. Yes. I mean, but a lot of the use cases we think of today tend to be search centric or question answering centric, kind of like the demo that I gave. And that's kind of where we're at today. And it works really well for that kind of thing. Also content generation, for marketing and stuff like that. But in the relatively near future, especially now with these plugins starting to come on the scene, you will start to see integrations to systems of action. And so one really interesting one here not here because we're not using Teams right now, but in Teams Premium, like you finish a meeting and it uses GPT to give you the summary of the meeting and find like, here's all the times that Seth was mentioned in the meeting. And here's the questions and here's the next steps and stuff like that. And so, there's all kinds of really interesting things that you're going to start to see emerge.
I'm going to translate that, Marco, into I don't have to go to any meeting on Teams ever again. I'll just read the summary. He's like, maybe don't, Seth. Here's the next question. Good one. Is GPT-4 available to use? As I'm assuming conversation history would be much longer due to the token limits.
It is. I mean, it's in public preview right now. As of for those of you who are watching this in recorded form, it depends on when you watch it, I guess. But we have put it in public preview as of I think March 23rd or 22nd, 2023. So it kind of is available to use, but really you should always start with GPT 3.5 Turbo. It's extremely capable. It's been powering ChatGPT, the consumer ChatGPT, all along. It's much cheaper and it's low latency. And it gets the job done under most circumstances. So before you jump to the giant GPT-4, try it on Turbo.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of questions, and I'll just blanket question: when will we get, GPT model foo in region bar? That's generally the question. What's your standard answer for that?
My standard answer is we're working on it. So I mean, we have availability right now in terms of regional availability. We have availability primarily in the United States and a little bit now in Western Europe. So, we're rolling it out as fast as we can. But I don't have a specific time frame on other regions right now.
Very good. Here is another, that one we can't answer. There's some that I'm like, that's a good question, but I don't think we can answer that. Let's see. What is the best way to start the chat? Asking the user information, who is using it, like traditional chatbot. So what is the best way to start a chat with the prompt engineering things? And the other thing is, like, as you're thinking about this, because like my sense is that people are kind of pigeonholing this into a chat centric use case, but my sense is that there's way more
Sure.
available. So the first and the second, your thoughts?
Well, actually, I would point to to the person's question directly. That demo that you alluded to, Seth, that you made.
Hmm.
One thing that I didn't do in my demonstration, but you did in yours, is you set a context in the prompt. You actually said this person is Seth, and he is X years old, and he's coming from wherever. So you were assuming in this case kind of a logged in user,
Right.
and so you weren't just starting raw with like, "Hi, who are you?" It was more like, "Hey, Seth, what's up? How can I help you?"
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I actually tested this morning and it's like, hi, I'm John. What can I do for you, Seth? And it's like, oh, okay. It's
So
magic.
anyway, I mean, yeah, you can inject not just data into the prompt. You can inject context also, and you can let it use that context to address the user if you have that context. But beyond that, yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on your use case. And as Seth said, I mean, it is true that it's not just conversational. I mean, we're using the same models, for example, to do the team summarization that I just talked about, right? So it doesn't always have to be conversational.
That's
It
right.
can be a one shot kind of, I want to summarize this meeting or this thing, or I want to extract this other thing.
Here's a good question from Roberto. Is there any moderation capabilities on ChatGPT? I know there is for sure on Azure. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't speak to ChatGPT itself, like, consumer, OpenAI, whatever. But in
Mhm.
terms of what Azure's doing, yes, we do have content moderation. It actually is built in. I mean, if you try to use the stock ChatGPT interface the one that I was using, and you try to get it to say something bad, it will not do it. There will be a little yellow message at the top that says this response has been blocked by the content moderator. And it actually goes two ways. There's an in and an out. So if I ask it some, hateful thing or whatever, I say some racist thing, it'll block it on the way in and be like, no, you can't do that.
Ah,
And on the way out, let's say that I put in something innocuous, and for some reason the GPT model outputs something that is totally not innocuous, it'll block it on the way out also. And that's something that we will be rapidly improving. So stay tuned here again for Build, and we'll talk more about our content moderation capabilities then.
that's cool. So we're trying to be protectful. That's a non-word, but everyone understands that. On the
Protectful.
way in and on the way out as well.
Yep, that's
All
right.
right. So here's a question. Can you use, this is Jay McCormick. Welcome back, my friend. Can you use Azure AI ChatGPT for non-web interactions like an IVR voice prompt?
This is a good question, and of course, people are already trying to do this today. So you do see this happening today. It is still in a very nascent state to use this for non-textual interaction. You can try it yourself, actually. If you download the Bing mobile app, you'll notice that there is a voice interface on the chat thing. Now, the problem is that it has a tendency to be too verbose for an IVR type of interaction. So you'll see what I mean if you use this mobile app. Like,
Uh-huh.
you go talk to it and it talks and talks and talks and talks and talks back. And it's non-interruptible. And, so IVR, you want it to have different qualities. And I think we collectively are still arriving at how we're going to do that, but it's definitely going to happen.
Great. Here's a question from Ying Yang. Is the entire conversation log passed in as part of the prompt counted towards the token count used by this API call?
Yeah,
Yes. It's just literally, it's just like pass it tokens, get your tokens, and I think it's it's charged per token or something, right?
right. So, I mean, sometimes we put, like in Bing, we put a limit on how long the conversation can be. Now it's actually a much more liberal now than it was a few weeks ago. I don't know the exact number. And that might be a thing that you might want to do because, yeah, I mean, most people don't have super ultra mega long conversations with these things.
That's right. To be fair, this is probably the longest conversation I'm going to have with someone this week. With a person. How would you summarize the easiest way to keep the context limited to a given business? And you talked a little bit about that, but I think it's worth repeating.
Yeah, I mean, it's a multi-pronged strategy. Part of it is the meta prompt and how you set up that meta prompt and the instructions you give it to do that domain restriction. Part of it is the data grounding. So, what are you grounding it to, and making sure that it's grounded only to the data that you want to be grounded to. And part of it is also content moderation. So as we kind of covered just a minute ago, content moderation is a piece of making sure that it doesn't go off the rails in other ways that you don't want it to go.
Well, my friend, that's the walk-off music.
Okay.
Because we
Walk
are
me right off.
we are basically out of time. Marco, thanks for being with us, buddy.
Thank you for having me, and thank you all.
All right. We're happy to do another one of these because there's so many questions. We've never had this many questions, but it feels like everyone wants to answer questions. So maybe we'll have you on again, Marco, or someone else like Dom or Chris.
Cool.
All right, buddy. We'll see you later.
All right. See y'all.
All right, my friends. What a delightful conversation we've had with people today. Next week, for those that are watching, my walk-off music still has like 4 minutes. Next week, 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, we're going to be talking about responsible AI mitigations and tracker with Besmira Nushi and Mara Abdin. Great stuff on how to make your AI more responsible. And this is for standard AI, LLMs. I think we'll talk about some of that stuff later too. But for those wondering, this is a weekly show where we talk about AI stuff, and I didn't even get a chance to show my proof of concept. Maybe I'll show that next week. I actually did. I built the whole program. Here, let me show you. I'll show you. I'll show you just briefly. Because I mean, what are they gonna do? Kick us off? Who's gonna kick us off? Who? They can't do it. Hold on, I gotta open Visual Studio Code. So here it is. You can actually see my call here. Yarn dev. Boop. Localhost 3000. No, not that window. Let's go to this window here. I even had this is the portal, by the way. Localhost 3000. Look at this is my goofy one. I'll have to make this repo public, but it's the best for you organics company. Hi. What do you have to say, robot? Hi, Seth. John here. How can I assist you today? What do you do, my robot friend? Great question, Seth. Let's see what this. By the way, this is running with the GPT 3.5 Turbo. We offer 2 product lines. Ooh, food. Look at this. I mean, like I'm having like the dumbest conversation because obviously I'm the dumb one, but look at how it just answers it. Can you send me all the foods? Like I'm having like a really dumb conversation with this thing, but it's really nice to me. Can you send me all the foods? Look at that. Same day shipping for me because that's really nice. Sing me a song about your foods. Right? And the thing that's cool is that like I'll show you how I built this maybe next week or the week after. And you'll see that it's no. Like Elvis. Like I'm telling it, come on. I mean, this is cool, right? I built a personal experience with calling a single API point. So we'll make sure to get to that. Maybe I'll show you how I built this next week. I think it's the first time I've ever showed this publicly. So as always, thank you so much for spending some time with us. We've been having a good time on the AI show. This show happens every week live. If you are on Spotify, we're putting these up on Spotify as well. So if you're driving around, you can listen to us. My name is Seth Juarez. This is the AI show. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Take care.